Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the next in the Romantic Piano Concerto Big Box. Big Box. There it is. There's the cover of the Big Box. On Hyperion, which is 50 volumes. Oh my God, 50 volumes of romantic piano concertos, most of which you probably never heard of. This album is an exception. This is CD 17, and it contains all of Mendelssohn's music for solo piano and orchestra. And oh, what a wonderful collection it is. You know, one of the issues with doing a series like this, especially when it consists mostly of unknown music, or unfamiliar music, is that it's very hard to decide whether the performance is good or bad beyond a certain point of, technical brilliance or facility, which you can almost always count on these days. But the reality, of course, is that the acid test of the success of this series and its seriousness is how well it does in music that's relatively familiar. And the Mendelssohn concertos certainly fall into that category. There are splendid Mendelssohn concerto recordings already out there. I'm thinking, for example, of, Rudolf Serkin with Eugene Ormandy. He's kind of the reference in the Mendelssohn works for solo piano and orchestra. But there are also excellent competing versions. For example, Jean-Yves Thibaudet with Herbert Blomstedt, who's absolutely fabulous and amazing, with the Gewandhaus Orchestra. These are really powerful contenders on major labels with major soloists. Stephen Hough, when he made this, had not yet become Sir, I don't think. Now he's Sir Stephen Hough. But it doesn't matter. He was always a really fine pianist, but this was when he was kind of, still stirring the pot a little bit and finding his way. And it's a fabulous disc. It's right up there with the best of them, with Thibaudet and Serkin and Andras Schiff and, a couple others who were really first-rate in this music. And the works themselves are marvelous. It's so good to see these pieces being played in a clump and taken seriously, and given with such spirit and joie de vivre. It's what the music needs. Mendelssohn's piano concertos are kind of poo-pooed. They're looked down on a little bit because they're not big, heavy, beefy virtuoso pieces, like the late Russian concertos like Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff. And they're not as long as, for example, Schumann's. And they're not as symphonically big as like Brahms. They are exciting, virtuoso pieces, but elegant. And they're compact, actually. Mendelssohn was the guy, and this is important, was the guy who actually invented romantic concerto form. That is, he left out that long orchestral introduction that you hear in Mozart and Beethoven and later concertos in that form, where the soloist only comes in after the first 5 minutes and you're wondering why they're sitting there doing nothing while the orchestra plays on. I mean, that's one version of concerto form. But Mendelssohn's form was much, much simpler. It's the Grieg Schumann sort of version of the form where the soloist comes in right away. Maybe there are a few bars of introduction, and off they go, orchestra and solo together. And the orchestra, rather than having its own individual thematic identity forged through dialogue in the first movement of the concerto, is basically just a multi-voiced accompaniment to frame the soloist in as many different and colorful ways as possible. And that became a very attractive option for most future concerto writers. So here's sort of where it began. And Mendelssohn was his own worst enemy in that after these pieces, he wrote the Violin Concerto, which is such a staggering masterpiece that it kind of diminished the scale of these works. But they're great. Not only are the concertos beautiful, but the solo works, the short solo works, are fabulous. And they never get performed anymore because there's no place in concerts for short piano and orchestra pieces that only last 10 or 12 minutes, that aren't full concertos. But, you could do all three of these and make a wonderful concerto out of them, sort of. They're all kind of fast, so yeah. But, you've got the Capriccio Brilliant in B minor, The Rondo Brilliant in E flat major, and the least known and one of the most amazing of all of them, the Serenade and Allegro Giocoso in B minor, Opus 43, a late work, and it's just marvelous. The interesting thing about these is, for all their theoretical lightweightedness, all of them except for the Rondo Brilliant in E flat major are in minor keys. All of them. Everything here. Even the Allegro Giocoso. What's Giocoso about B minor? Well, it gets to the Giocoso part, obviously. But there is a pathos and that typical Mendelssohnian fidgety energy that runs through all of this music that I find extremely attractive. And Hough captures that. He captures that sort of febrile intensity, the music has. It's really, really very, very moving and extremely exciting. And this is tremendous. You've got the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra with Lawrence Foster conducting. The sonics are terrific. It's one of the great Mendelssohn recordings. So you don't need to go burrowing around in the box. Get it separately. If you're interested in Mendelssohn, you should own this. It's important and it's beautiful. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.